This is Pet Life Radio. Let's talk pets.
Hello, feline friends. This is Michelle Fern, your host on Cattitude. Once again, we're going across the pond to speak with a phenomenal guest. She is also a host of a podcast called Catmaste Chronicles, and she has a phenomenal cat sitting business called Chatty Cats Care. So stay tuned. We'll be right back. Hey everyone, Michelle Fern here, your host on Best Bets for Pets and Cattitude. Ben and Jerry's has frozen treats for dogs. I know Nikki is going to love this. He loves a frozen treat. They have two different flavors. One is Punch's Mix, which is peanut butter and pretzel, and the other one is Rosie's Batch, which is pumpkin and mini cookies. You know, I kind of like both of those flavors too, but my absolute favorite is fish food. Anything Ben & Jerry's is always fabulous because the quality is so good and their mixes are so delicious. Be sure to check out more about these frozen dog desserts as well as pictures of all the caniners at the Ben & Jerry's Vermont office at benjerry.com. That's BENJERRY.com.
Let's Talk Pets on PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back, everyone. I'd like to introduce Michelle Adams, the host of Catmaste Chronicles Podcast and the owner, I believe, of Chatty Cats Care pet setting business. So welcome, Michelle.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, Michelle.
I'm so excited to chat with you. Lately, we've had some wonderful guests from the UK. You guys are just so knowledgeable about cats. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, I'm glad to hear it. It's so nice to connect over the pond, as you say, with people from the US. I never really had this chance before, so it's amazing to connect with you guys and talk about cats and share our experiences.
Yes, absolutely. So how did you get started in, your love for cats?
Well, it's been a long time. I've pretty much grown up around cats most of my life, to be honest. And it was my grandma who had cats. Unfortunately, I didn't have a cat in my home with my mother, but I'd spend a lot of time, at least 2 days a week, at my grandma's house throughout my whole childhood. And she had cats. So I grew up with them. And because I was kind of like an only child, I have a sister, but she's a lot older than me. She's 14 years older than me. So I always wanted a sibling who was like my age to play with. And the cats sort of became my siblings. And I really grew to love and care for them so much. And they'd always been like a part of my life, and my family kind of raised me to respect and love animals. So they've always been a huge part of my life, and I could never imagine life without them, to be honest.
That's really charming. And I like the fact that you mentioned that your parents taught you to respect animals at an early age, because there's a lot of households where there's pets, but parents don't do a good job of teaching their two-legged kids to respect their four-legged kids.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think maybe sometimes it comes to lack of knowledge of the adults and cats, because if a family, decided to get a cat, they may not have had experience with cats themselves. So they have no idea how to really raise a cat themselves, let alone, teach their children how to be respectful of cats. So when I work in different households, and because I work as a nanny as well, so I work in childcare. So my kind of specialty areas are children and cats. So I'm the kind of best person to really ask or teach people how to how to teach their children to better understand pets. And, children are very excited. So all they want to do is to play with the cats. And they sort of view cats and dogs as toys. And, they're not. They're living beings. So it's really about teaching them to understand that and to not pick them up all the time, to not bother them, to kind of teach children and to, help them to gain awareness when an animal is distressed through, body language or, for example, hissing. A cat might not like that. They'll hiss, and then a child will understand to not do that, or teach them how to pet the pet gently, pet the cat or dog in a gentle manner, not rough, and not on the opposite side, because some children as well, they'll stroke the cat or the dog in the wrong direction, and that can be quite irritating for the animal as well.
So, Michelle, tell me, you have a really successful pet sitting business. I think it's only cats, right?
Yeah. So we do occasionally look after dogs, but it is majority cats because, as you know, cats and dogs are completely different. They have so many different needs. And as much as I adore dogs as well, there is a lot more to do with dogs. You need to take them for walks. They're a lot needier than cats. You kind of need to be with them quite a lot. And at the time when I started the cat sitting company, I just didn't have time. I didn't have the time to be able to commit and give to dogs. So I knew that looking after cats solely would be much easier. And also a lot of people who are on my cat sitting team also have other jobs. So they're teachers, they're students, they work in the office, they're musicians. So it's great for them because it's very flexible. So we either have drop-in visits where, we'd have a pet sitter drop in the morning and feed the cat and then return again in the evening. So they have that quite a large space of time as well, where they could go to their other job or, get on with their daily tasks. So, and with a dog, I believe, when we did look after dogs in the past, it was pretty much a full-time thing where we had to be there quite a lot. We'd walk the dogs at least 3 times a day, and they kind of, I guess I sensed that they needed more companionship. So it was harder to kind of leave them alone. Whereas cats, I would say they're much more independent.
Absolutely. So before I ask you about some tips, because tips for looking for a cat sitting business, whether you're in the UK, the USA, Canada, just about anywhere, there are certain, I think, standard tips and standard things you want to look for. I would like to know if you have any interesting cat sitting stories you can share with us.
Any interesting cat sitting stories?
Something funny.
There's so many funny stories. It's hard to pick one. Let me think. Okay. There's one that I can think of. So there's a cat that we look after. It's an Abyssinian cat. So they originate from Africa. They sort of look like Phoenix foxes. They're quite small, but they have a very elegant look about them. And they're originally from Africa. So we have this breed here in the UK. So we have a cat called Gabby who we look after. He recently got a sibling, another Abyssinian cat, and her name is Lily. They're so different in character. And it was very hard for both of them to get used to each other because Lily was, her owners got her during the lockdown in London, and Gabby was there with the household for about just over a year, I would say. I started to look after him, to cat sit him around 2 years ago. And then, when I heard that they were getting a new edition, I thought, oh, how is Gabby going to take this? Because he was just used to being the only cat and having all of the attention. So I gave lots of advice to the owners about how they could slowly introduce the cats to each other without distressing each other too much. And they finally worked it out in the end. However, when I went to cat sit, after both of them were there in the house, Gabby, the cat who'd been there the longest, was behaving so very differently towards me, almost very territorial. And he'd be very annoyed if I wouldn't greet him first. So he was like the king of the household, and he'd get very annoyed if you were to greet his sister Lily first. He wouldn't like it, and he'd hiss quite a lot at her. But it was strange because I looked after them for quite a long period of time during the summer last year, and I watched them kind of grow closer together, which was really nice. But the funny story is, so they have a catio. So most of the cats that we look after are actually indoor cats, but a lot of people here in the UK have catios. Sometimes outdoor space is quite rare for people in the city. They just have balconies or terraces, as we call them. So people get special netting to put up outside on their terrace so that their cats cannot escape over it, but they can still get the outdoor space. But there's the tiniest little gap in the netting, and Gabby's he's a very, very clever cat. I don't know if all of the kind of breed of this cat is like this, but he's not, I wouldn't say calculated, but in a way he is, because it was like he knew and he watched every move and he just waited for the perfect opportunity to escape. So he did escape. He managed to somehow climb through this little tiny gap in the netting and ended up on the roof. So my partner and I, we often cat sit together actually. So he was helping me as we were trying to lure Gabby back in with different cat treats and bells. Yeah, at that point as well, I'd already, told the owners what had happened, and they said this had happened to them before and that it took 3 hours for them to finally get him back. So they have like this special camera where you can speak through the camera. So they were making lots of bird noises. I was rattling toys. Like if anybody could see us, like any neighbors, they think, what on earth is going on here? Why can I hear bird noises? And why is this girl shaking a bag of cat treats and calling? But it was so funny because we finally managed to get him back. And this was around 10 p.m. at night. And we had to be somewhere early the next day. But my partner, because so there was 2 doors to the terrace, and he'd been outside the other one trying to get the cat back in. I finally got him in and closed the door. But what my partner forgot to do was close the other door. So of course he was in and then back out around to the other door and then back on the roof again. So he didn't actually come in until midnight. So it was just a long evening of trying to get him back. Finally, he came back because it rained and he really hates water. So he came just darting back into the house. And we learned from that lesson to keep a very watchful eye on him because he was very sneaky.
I looked up Abyssinian. I'm sure we have them here. We have all kinds of cats here. Beautiful cat.
Beautiful cat.
They're clever sometimes, aren't they? How they get into stuff. And my favorite, but it's not merely a favorite, is if I leave the closet door open. I have a really long walk-in closet with way too much stuff. And I'll look, to one side and all of a sudden see something moving and just scare the heck out of myself. They're just so clever, They hide in the strangest places.
Yeah. Absolutely. That's why I guess the name cat burglar comes to mind.
Exactly. So let's talk about what are some good cat sitting tips for pet parents if they are either looking for a cat sitter, and also what to expect and what not to expect. I think this kind of information is universal for anyone pretty much.
Exactly. So I'll tell you a bit about what I do, which I believe is probably a very good method actually, and it should be helpful for people who are looking for a cat sitter. So, on my website, I have listed everything kind of like that somebody who wanted to book cat sitting would need to know. So, what's expected, what to expect with the service, what we do, what we offer, our experience with different breeds of cats, with elderly cats, with cats that need medication. I think it's important to kind of understand or to research that the person who is looking after your cat has experience with, for example, administering medication, because I now have experience with giving cats insulin, with injections, pills, with food, but also orally. And that's something quite important. So when I'm recruiting for cat sitters, I try to find out the extent of their experience as well. And often, I only really recruit other cat sitters that have that experience with cats, so that it wouldn't really require too much training and they feel very confident within themselves. And I think that puts a client's mind at ease as well, knowing that their cat is being looked after, especially if they have a medical condition. Secondly is like insurance, to make sure that, the person has pet insurance, they're covered. My pet insurance is very good. So it's covered with all health kind of needs and issues, the vet bills. Even if, for example, a key is lost or left in a house, the insurance that I have covers a locksmith to come to the house. It also, which quite impressed me, covers, say, for example, a client is in a different country on vacation. It actually covers their flight costs back if they need to come back home for an emergency situation with their pet.
The insurance that your company holds.
Yeah. So I thought that was amazing.
I don't know if we have that good of insurance in the US, but I know that something common is to make sure that your pet sitter is bonded.
Yes, absolutely. It's so important because you never know what could happen. Personally, I haven't experienced any situations where I've needed to use it, but it's always good to have that anyway, especially in terms of healthcare. If a cat is very poorly, and you want the client to feel at ease as well, so that even though they're in a completely different country, we're able to help cover any veterinary costs and any transport and things like that, which definitely puts their mind at ease. Another thing we do is we make sure that at the moment, we can't personally meet and greet people because of the COVID restrictions. But we were doing this pre-COVID. We'd visit the client at their home and meet them personally, physically, before the pet sitting began, so that they, know us, they're familiar with us, and that we could meet their cat. And they get to show us around their home and where the food is kept and the litter tray, etc. At the moment, we're doing this virtually. So we're having Zoom calls with them, and they get to kind of show us around, and we'll meet their pet virtually if their cat is around, which is nice. It's not the same, so I'm looking forward to it going back to being able to mix in households. But at the moment, we're just doing everything virtually, and that's very important because I think it's important for a client as well to put their mind at ease so that they can meet the person who will actually be coming into their home and looking after their cat.
Okay, we're going to take a short break. I have one more question for you about cat sitting, and then we'll talk about your podcast. So we'll be right back after this break. Hey everybody, Michelle Fern here. When you have dogs and cats living in your house, there's always a time when you have to be a detective, find out who left the present on the rug, who chewed up your new shoes, or who ripped open that bag of chips on the counter. Well, as a detective, I've discovered June's Journey. It's a fun new game where you search for hidden objects to solve a murder mystery. I've even found clues that were dogs, cats, birds, and other animals. With new chapters every week, June's Journey is a wonderful way to keep my memory and observation skills sharp. And hey, it's fun racking up those points. Join the 30 million fans worldwide and download June's Journey free to your phone or tablet on the Apple app or Google Play Store today.
Let's talk pets.
Let's talk pets
On Pet Life Radio.
Pet Life Radio.
PetLifeRadio.com.
Welcome back, everyone. We're talking to Michelle Adams from the UK, and we're talking about her Chatty Cats Care, her cat pet sitting business, and then we're going to talk about her podcast, Catmaste Chronicles. So here's my last question on cat sitting. What should a pet parent, we talked about what a pet parent should expect. What should they not expect? Also known as your peeves, like unreal expectations of a pet parent.
Well,
you can vent. This is your venting time.
It's hard. Okay, so, we've had people in the past, and of course, cats are so important to us, and they're almost like, our children, in a sense. You feel the same as you would a child. You feel worried if you're leaving them with a new person. But sometimes, so I do have some clients who do get quite worried. It's understandable if it's a first booking, but I guess after a while, it's quite difficult if a client continuously kind of wants lots and lots and lots of updates during the day, especially if they've only kind of booked for drop-in visits. So we offer different services. So there's like an overnight service, and that means that we can kind of be there with their cat all the time. And I recommend this service to cats who need extra attention, or cats that may have, anxieties and may not like being alone, or we have just the daily drop-in services. So I think, I've listed everything on the website of what should be expected with each service. So if it is just the drop-in services that they kind of have booked, then sadly, it's difficult when they expect more or expect more than just the drop-in visits, because we do a lot anyway. As a service, I don't really have a minimum time to spend with cats. So I don't charge per hour, which is what a lot of other cat sitting companies do. We actually have, for example, so sometimes we have a 30-minute minimum time, but say, for example, a client has booked 2 times a day, 2 visits a day. I may visit 30 minutes in the morning, but then in the evening, I could spend 1 to even 5 hours, sometimes up to 5 hours with a pet. And I don't charge any extra for that, because I feel like it's my duty as a carer, but also a cat lover, to give the cats that extra attention and not pay for it. But of course, if a pet sitter, or if one of my cat sitters is unable to spend that amount of time, it's completely understandable. But we do try to go above and beyond as much as we can. And sometimes I think because we do that, and because I say this, then people have higher expectations of what they should kind of receive, even if they're just paying for a drop-in visit.
Okay, let's talk about, I think that is great information. And, even though you're based in the UK and you're not branched out to the USA yet with your cat sitting business, there's a lot of, great information for pet owners here for when they're looking for a cat sitter. Let's talk about your podcast. So what made you decide to start Catmaste Chronicles?
Yeah, so it's actually called the Catmaste Chronicles, Michelle. So a bit like...
Sorry?
Catmaste,
okay.
Yeah, so it's a play on the word namaste.
Namaste. Okay, namaste.
Yes.
That's yoga.
Exactly. So
now today, because it's been crazy Friday. Okay. Catmaste. Oh, I love that. Okay. Wonderful.
Yeah, so it's called the Catmaste Chronicles because I like to practice yoga, but not as often as you'd think. But I wanted to create a podcast about well-being, and I love yoga, and I love that it is about well-being, and I love that they give thankfulness at the end by saying the word namaste. So I wanted to create a word that kind of fit with cats and thankfulness and well-being. So Catmaste just sprang to mind. I created it actually during the lockdown, the first lockdown period in the UK that we had here. And it was just a way really to keep connected with people and keep connected with our followers, our clients, and to build a community of cat lovers as well, because my business hasn't been really operating for well, like it used to for, over a year now. So it's been very hard and difficult. It's been very detrimental for a lot of small business owners in the UK here. And even now, my business hasn't really picked up yet because of the restrictions. So for my own well-being, actually, it was a selfish venture, but it actually did help myself. It helped me as well to create the podcast. But also when I had no expectations of this, taking off as it did. I thought maybe I'd get like 5 or 10 listeners. And now, we get so many downloads, and I can't believe that people actually tune in. Like, it's just an amazing feeling. And I get so many great guests on the show as well. Like, it's been amazing meeting people.
I know how you feel. I took over Cattitude from the original show host in 2017, and it blew my mind how many listeners and how much it affects people and how many comments I receive and how many people I've been in touch with different things. Our shows are definitely different because mine is totally focused on cats and yours is cats and well-being. But I think there's a lot of ears out there. So there's always room for another podcast,
Absolutely.
Always room. Okay, here's something else I want to ask you. Mm-hmm. Do you think from what you know, because I don't even know have you ever traveled to the US?
I've only traveled once, and it was quite a long time ago. I went to LA.
Okay, I used to live in LA. It's funny how the US is so different. The states are all so different.
Yes.
But overall, from what you've read or heard over the years, do you think there's a big difference between USA cats and UK cats?
I do, Michelle, because actually a lot of people that we have, a lot of our clients are actually expats, and a lot of people actually previously lived in America, or I get people who are US citizens and they're here just on a work visa, or they're here just for a small amount of time and they have cats here, or they've brought their cats with them, which I think is amazing. So I've looked after quite a lot of cats who are from the US, who are here for a temporary amount of time, or here long term now, because a lot of people have rescued cats from the US that now live in the UK. And I've noticed that the cats from the US are so big. They're so much bigger than the cats that we have here.
Like, it is big in the US.
So big. Yeah, it's true. Because even when I visited, like, the food, it's so much bigger than we have here in the UK. Like, we have such tiny, like, little roads and streets, and we have tiny little portions of food. And then in the US, it blew my mind. I absolutely loved the trip there, and I'd love to return again. But yeah, it's so big. It's so funny to work with some of the cats from the US, actually, because they're like little gentle giants, some of them. They're so
Yeah, that's interesting. I hadn't heard that before, and I have been fortunate. I haven't made it to the UK yet, but I've been to several countries in Europe, and I've even had a chance to go to Australia and New Zealand in the past. And I know in Europe, everything's very small, as far as, streets. And I didn't see a huge difference from portion, but I know what you mean, because there's some places where myself and my husband, we just share something because the portions are crazy big.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't make sense. But I did not realize that our cats were so big. Maybe we overfeed them here?
I don't know what it is, because they're not necessarily fat. They're just really tall as well. They're really just big. They look like, they're evolutionized somehow, domestic cats. I don't know how.
I don't know.
Especially the Maine Coons. They're huge.
Oh, yes. And Dennis, my very first cat, he's part Maine Coon, and he's big. I mean, he has a lot of hair, but he's big. But some of the Maine Coons are huge. He's not huge because he's only part, but some are, like over 2 feet long if you're holding maybe 3 feet. They're huge.
They are, especially when they jump. Wow. They're beautiful, though. Very beautiful, gorgeous cats.
Any other differences that you've noticed?
Not really. I guess, yeah, they eat more as well. Maybe that's because they're so big. I don't know. I've noticed that they do kind of eat very quickly. Actually, there's 2 cats that we look after, and they were from New York. Their owner, she moved back. Well, she didn't. She was living in, I forgot where she moved from before, but she lived in New York for some years. And then she's moved to the UK probably, I want to say, for 5 years now. And she brought back the 2 rescue cats from New York. And I'm not sure if they eat quickly because they were previously street cats, but they eat so faster than like most cats that I know, because most cats in the UK, though, I don't know, I've noticed that they eat a little bit, they'll go away from the food bowl, come back, eat a little bit more. But the cats that were from New York, they just, eat something so quickly. You'd be shocked. I've never seen it before.
I have 3 cats that are indoor, and the 2 that are outdoor we take care of them as much as we can, but we can't separate them because the female part of that partnership, she would not do well indoors. So they have a house, they have all this stuff. So of these cats, all of them were rescues, and they all eat super fast.
Yeah. Bless.
So even the indoor ones, they eat quickly. My youngest one, she gobbles it up and she's gone. And they leave they wet and dry. They leave some of the dry, and they'll come back and like nibble as the day goes on, out of each other's bowls.
Yeah. Maybe it's because they maybe previously had to kind of get food quickly if they were, on the streets or whatever situation they were in before. Maybe they have that trauma of not being able to get the food quick enough. So their instinct is to just eat as quickly as possible before, another cat eats their food. Maybe
Very
that's
possible. The only other thing I've noticed, and this was from a show that I did with a cat behaviorist in the UK that I really like, Anita Kelly.
Is her name Anita?
Yes, Anita.
I love her. She's coming onto my podcast soon.
She's wonderful, and her books are fabulous.
I know. I've read her books.
She's great. She calls cats mogs.
Yeah, mogs. Yeah.
I asked another person from the UK, and she said, nope, that must be from either northern or southern.
Yeah. Do you know what? It does sound like a northern thing, because in London, I've heard it before, but it's not really something we would say. And if I was to say a moggy cat, I'd kind of be referring to a female cat. I don't know why I put a gender on it, but I don't know. Yeah, it's something that I do.
A mog, I would think it's something related to Harry Potter. So I'd not heard that before, but it's all throughout her books. I was asking her about that. Yeah. So that's interesting. Well, you'll enjoy having her as a guest. So let's tell people, where can they find your podcast and information on Chatty Cats Care?
Yeah, sure. So the podcast is on all, major podcast platforms: Spotify, Apple Podcast, Audible, Radio Public, all of the major kind of platforms that you can think of. And it's the Catmaste Chronicles. And then our Chatty Cats Care website, it could still be interesting for people that live in the US, because even though you may not be booking pet sitting, I still try to put quite interesting information on there. So we'll have like blog posts about cats, different information about cats. So, it may still be interesting. And it's at www.chattycatscare.co.uk. And yeah, people can find us on there as well.
Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for coming on Cattitude and sharing all of this wonderful information.
Thank you.
We wish you major success, and I'm with you. I'm glad that this COVID business is hopefully coming to the end. We're recording this in spring 2021. We've had a year of it, and we're done, right? We want this to be done.
Definitely. I'm done. I'm waiting I'd love to spend some more time with cats. I miss them so much.
I miss walking around without a mask. I miss lipstick.
Yeah, me too.
Makeup. I miss that,
Me too. Me too.
Well, thank you again, Michelle. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I hope that was an interesting show for you. I love when I have guests from other countries. It's always interesting to learn, how much, even though we're so different, we're also a lot the same, So thank you so much to my guest, Michelle Adams, for coming on Cattitude. Thanks to my producer, Mark Winter, for making me and my guest sound wonderful. And he does that for all of you listening, so you have a pleasant experience listening to all of our shows. And I want to give a big shout out to everyone listening to Cattitude. Thank you so much. And a special little thanks to my cat crew, which is Molly and Charlotte and Dennis and Sammy and Jethro. So just remember, it's not about attitude, it's about Cattitude. Talk to you soon.
Let's Talk Pets, every week on demand, only on PetLifeRadio.com.